All right, well, welcome everyone. We're also being live streamed, as you can kind of tell now, since we're trying to figure out what our range of motion would be. We're going to talk about technology and mobile devices and social media, and we're going to do it from two different perspectives. We're going to do it from both a staff perspective and that experience, as well as a student perspective. So maybe we should flip because I'm over there and you're over here, but we're represented by our favorite emojis, or the ones we think best represent our personality, which I think tells you a little something about my colleague here. But my name is Paul Brown. I work at a software company called Roompact. I've completed my first year there. I've previously worked in residence life and student affairs for 15 years, and completed my doctoral research almost a year ago to the day at Boston College. And so that's actually what I'll be sharing with you.
And I'm Annie Stark. I'm the Director of Residence Life and Education at the University of Central Florida. It'll be 2 years and 2 weeks, so that's pretty fabulous. Defended my dissertation in December of 2015 from Purdue University and focused on mobile tech use and staff burnout. So I'll be covering the staff side of today's presentation.
Yeah. And so in terms of our objectives, we're going to talk a little bit about causes of burnout among residence life and student affairs professionals. Sources of dissatisfaction and stress among college students, social media users. And then we're going to talk a little bit about healthy behaviors and how to help students as well as staff cultivate those, or at least how to understand what these experiences are. So we all know technology is important, right? It's very important. So this is one of my favorite slides. I cannot take credit for this. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs re-envisioned for technology. Battery life coming first, followed by Wi-Fi, and then food, water, and shelter. I think we sometimes feel like this. In terms of tech use and social media use as well, we do know that more and more people are using it pretty much ubiquitously. If you look at the statistics on tech use or social media use, of course, in particular, the only thing that's statistically significant in predicting social media use is age. So the older you are, the less likely you are to be on social media and use tech. The younger you are, the more likely you are. If you look across other demographics, so we're talking gender, race and ethnicity, and things of that sort, those actually aren't significant predictors of technology use. They're pretty uniform across that. Socioeconomic status also actually maybe surprisingly as well. And the reason for that, of course, is these devices, which are way cheaper than they ever were and are basically small computers. So the access to technology that we talked about in previous generations, that's kind of been erased a little bit by these devices. Now that doesn't mean that you're getting a different experience on this than you would on a laptop. So we can talk about maybe haves and have-nots in terms of mobile devices and laptops. But everyone is pretty much tuned in through technology in some way, shape, or form. So the way we're going to go about this is we're going to start off with Annie talking about staff burnout and her study, and then we're going to switch over to me, and then we're going to do a kind of discussion and then bring it all back. So you sure can.
I get control. So we're going to talk about burnout. How many of you have felt burned out in your job before? It's okay for the ones that work in my organization to say yes. In the room. Yeah, so burnout, for the purpose of my study, I use the definition of a syndrome of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment that can occur among individuals who work with people in some capacity. Yeah, does that feel real? Very much so, right? Working with people, 3 o'clock in the morning, CNN barking down our door, like it can get to be a thing. And it can definitely burn us out. So my curiosity was, does our use of mobile technology increase our burnout experience in student affairs? And so as I was looking through the burnout research, started a lot with social work and teachers. And when we focused on teachers, people were interested in the emotional taxation that comes from being a teacher and the workload of teachers. Then it sort of morphed into, well, what do police officers experience in terms of burnout? And that took a little bit of a different shift. That was focused on both the physical and the emotional aspects of burnout, as well as that family interaction, that work-family interaction that happens with police officers. And that was the angle that they took on burnout for police officers. Then we moved into student athletes, and this again took a different focus on burnout, where student athletes were more focused on high performance and perfectionism. And so burnout sort of came from their pursuit of perfection and not necessarily the emotional exhaustion that we talked about in the definition before. So what I did was I used this study or this inventory called the Maslach Burnout Inventory. Why? Because it was already tested, it's already reliable, I didn't have to develop anything, and from a quantitative perspective, you want to use tools that are already there. It makes it a lot easier for you. This has been around since the 60s, so it's been well tested. It was a short survey, it didn't take too long to figure out. In addition to just the regular burnout, they had an areas of work life, which helped also determine which aspects of the workforce led to burnout as well. And so with the areas of work life, it measured 6 different areas of burnout that you can experience in the workplace. One of those being the workload that we talked about before. You ever feel like you have too much on your plate and not enough time to do? Yeah, that's real. Also, your control over the work that you have. I was told when I was an entry-level professional that you'll never have more control over your work than you do right now. I didn't believe that at that point in time. I believe that now. So new professionals in the world, or in the room, believe that. It's true. You have the most control right now. As you move up, you have less control over your work. And that shows in my research as well. Also, a sense of reward. If there's a lack of reward in your workplace, that will cause employees to feel burned out on a higher rate. So if you're not rewarding your employees, please do. Make them feel like they're special. A sense of community. You know, this connects a little bit with Gallup's research saying that you need to have a best friend in the workplace. You need to have that community in the workplace as well. If you feel like you're just a cog in the wheel, that you don't matter to those that you work with, then burnout's going to be higher for you. It's got to be fair. If you have a perception that your workplace doesn't treat people fairly, you're not going to be happy. So those of us who are in supervisory roles, make sure that you're trying to be as fair as possible. And then the last piece is the values. So if your personal values don't align with your institutional values, you're also more likely to burn out as well. So when you put those together with the email, the text messages, and the phone calls that we get 24/7, I was curious to know if there was a difference in our burnout. And what I found was, no, we're just a bunch of grouchy folks. And we are burnt out, we do burn out. And it turns out, based on my research, that the longer you've been in the field, the more likely you are to be cynical about your work, which I thought was interesting. But it has nothing to do with our tech use. And so those who may think that because we're always stuck on our technology, we're burning out, that's not true. We'll talk a little bit later about what those actual pieces were. Matthew.
Yeah. All right, let me talk a little bit about students' use. And so when it comes to student use, you kind of can't separate mobile from social media from technology for students. That's a really hard thing to do. They actually really go hand in hand in the way that they understand and experience that. And so in terms of my research, mine was qualitative. I talked a little bit about what I call digitized development. So that really means essentially, what does development look like when these digital environments are introduced? Does it, give it some different spins? Maybe some of the concepts that we've used before, do they apply? Do they not? Are there maybe some tweaks that have to be made for them? And that's where kind of digitized development comes into play. And so in terms of my research, I used a grounded approach. It really aligned a lot as the more I was going through it with Marcia Baxter-Revolta's self-authorship theory, that you see the arc in terms of students and their digital lives follow the same kinds of patterns. So this is a slide with a lot of small text on it, so don't worry about reading it, I'm going to walk you through it. We know that speaking in broad brushstrokes, that Marcia Baxter-Revolta's work says we move from external definition to internal definition, right? That's that move towards being able to author your own lives or self-authorship. And those types of behaviors are exactly what you see for a traditional college undergraduate over the course of their 4 years. So as they enter in and they're externally defined, right, they're looking for validation for others, things of that sort. So on social media, students are usually actively exploring. This is why we see so many mistakes from first-year students when it comes to social media, because they're just exploring and figuring it out. They don't have a sophisticated understanding of it. It's usually strongly influenced by authorities at this point. So mom and dad say you can have a Facebook account or you can't. So that's one way it's been influenced by authorities. Others, the messages that they generally have been receiving in most high schools, although I think this is now changing, have been be afraid of social media. There are predators on social media. Bad things happen to people on social media. So you should try to lock that down and keep it as private as possible. So those are the types of messages that they're walking away with. They experiment and understand it through peer culture, right? Think of adolescence, particularly in high school, and how important peer culture is in being accepted. That carries over into the college years. And so the student also has a kind of a lower level sophistication and understanding of how online and offline worlds interact. So that's in part why we might see what do you mean I can get a student conduct case because of this thing that happened online? Because that's not the real world, right? That's online, so it's different. They don't understand how the two relate and how they might connect as well. Now, as students move towards self-authorship, and we know that most students will not reach that by the time that they leave college, but many are starting to move at least into a crossroads and towards that. Their understanding of social media use changes. It becomes more sophisticated. So they begin to make conscious choices about where they want it to fit into their lives. Rather than just doing it because that's what everyone else is doing, they start to go, hey, wait a minute. What is it doing for me? Why am I doing this? Do I even want to be on this? What's the purpose? They start to realize that. They also start to understand, because they've now gone through some life transitions, that use of social media changes over the course of their lifespan. So whereas it may be important for one purpose at one point, it'll change over time. The classic example I have of this is my undergraduate student that had just graduated, became a graduate student. And she said, well, I wasn't on social media as much before towards the end of my college experience, but now that all my friends are dispersed out into the country and I'm going through graduate school and basically a crisis of confidence, right? Confidence, like, can I be an adult, was what she was going through. She's like, sometimes I'll do things like post a picture of the sandwich I made for lunch to be like, see, I can do this, I'm adulting, like, here's the evidence, like, I'm living, it's exciting. And she's like, which is kind of how I used it when I was a first year student. So she recognized, that kind of cyclical nature in terms of where it fits into her lives. I also know that, in terms of my own social media experience, I went through the marriage photo phase, I went through the baby photo phase. I am now onto the I'm running a marathon because I'm confronting my mortality because I'm getting older phase, right? I got the health phase, so that's what I get a lot of. So how we use social media, where it fits into our lives and things like that, does have kind of an age-based correlation and does change over the course of your lifetime. And my students express that. In terms of our college students, because that external definition part, likes are usually a huge part of what motivates them, right? I need to get a lot of engagements, I get a lot of likes, it means something about me. Addie put it in a good way. She said, how many likes did your post get? Talking hypothetically. She's like, what does that even mean when someone asks that? She said, the number in itself doesn't mean anything unless you compare it to other posts, right? Well, what does 50 likes mean? Who knows? But if I have 50 and you have 30, that means something. Then you get into this whole thing where we start comparing ourselves to other people. That really isn't the best route to go down. And she said, I think you're thinking about it too much. And so all of my students echoed experiencing this, almost all of them. Some a little less so, but I mean, like, we're talking about 80 to 90% of them experience something. That they were beholden to these lights. And so they felt this pressure to create these perfected images or to show off an experience of themselves that looked perfect. Right? And this, you'll see a few of these. This is from an artist that says, here's what you actually see on Instagram, and then here's everything else that's going on around it. And so there becomes this idolized social media version of you, not my image, I wish, and a realistic version of you in terms of what you show. And so Mazoon says, in the back of my mind, there's a certain standard of interaction that I get on every single tweet that I want to make sure I don't drop. That you need to have a certain number of engagements or likes or things like that. And so not only are students consuming some of these perfected images, but they're also then, producing some of these perfected images, they're also consuming them, right? So they're getting these selective views of reality, which skews what they think is actually going on in terms of things. And Hallie put it best. She said, we use social media as a highlight reel of our lives. And how many times out of 10 would you say that you wouldn't post something because it's not a highlight? And so this idea of always posting the positive. There's a lot of times when you think that people are having the best life ever because of what they're posting, when in reality they're going through a lot and probably many similar things that you are, but because they're posting all this fun stuff, you think their lives are perfect. So you can kind of see how this would spiral if you're constantly getting bombarded with these images and then feeling like you're not good enough and then having a feeling to catch up, and it kind of creates into this spiral. We haven't even talked about what this does with folks with marginalized identities and where they find space, because that creates a whole different set of issues as well alongside these. But everyone's really subject to this on some level. And my students gave analogies for this. They said, I feel like I'm wearing different outfits, or I have to change outfits, or I'm wearing different masks to show off different parts of myself, or that I'm doing this dance. Like, you can't be too much of something. So you have to appear like you're having a great time, but you can't appear as though you're trying to make you think that I'm having a great time, right? Because I can't try too hard. It has to look natural. So I have to moderate that, but I still have to do it. And so I have to figure out, how do I play this dance that counts for these things. And also this kind of game playing behavior. Annie, I've got to keep up. Why'd you do it? Why do you engage in this? She's like, I've got to keep up. I feel like I've got to keep up. And as you can tell, that would create a lot of stress on a student. I had one student, Logan, who I think regardless of whether social media existed or not, he would have struggled in college with comparisons and not feeling good enough. But with social media, it took it to a different level because he was constantly being bombarded with this. And he said, it's exhausting. It's what causes my unhappiness. The comparisons get so intense, I feel like I'm a constant failure. And so Logan expressed that. My other students didn't to the extent that Logan did, but he kind of crystallized it, I think, as an example of what happens when you're constantly consuming these perfected images and you're reading into them in ways that probably aren't necessarily healthy for you. Logan also extended that to his college career. So he wasn't satisfied in college because he was feeling like he was comparing himself to others. What was interesting about Logan, too, is I asked all the students, I said, what is your most used social media network? For most of them, that was Instagram. Facebook made it in there. Logan's was LinkedIn, which no one even had that, like usually the top two. And the reason why Logan's was LinkedIn was because he was worried about his job when he left college. And he thought, am I doing the right things? Am I achieving in the way that I'm supposed to? This other person got an internship. Why didn't I get an internship? Is their internship better than mine? And so that, I think, gives some insights into what was happening with him in particular online, right? His professional success and what's going to be the most successful. But students recognized that they did this behavior and that it wasn't good, generally, right? I definitely think about it more than I should, is what my one student said. And so that's really kind of the main thrust of my research in terms of students and, is it making them happy or burnt out or things like that, is the comparisons that they would do. And this experience in mobile technology was all related to their peers. It was kind of like they're hypersensitive to it when social media is added to the mix because it's always there. They've always struggled with these things before in college, but it wasn't omnipresent. Every time they look at their phone, they see it and it's constantly there, right? And so social media had a lot of reinforcing behaviors that I think made this more acute, or makes it more acute for college students. So we want to pause there and we want to do some breakout groups to talk about either like from staff and mobile burnout side of things, or the student side of things. So since we're a fairly full room, I don't think we should make you move, but if you want to talk about staff or students, turn to a partner or a little bit around a little bit, find someone that wants to engage in some of these, talk about that, and then we'll bring it back and we'll engage in some dialogue and some questions. So we'll give you about 5 or so minutes, and then we'll take it.
Those of us try to post the work. So it's not so much work. Being tied to a phone or tied to social media devices, it's contributing to comparison.
I'm getting some feedback out there.
Good job.
Our start.
Getting up to the number of think of it from the doing 1/10 of my Because it's all about competition. It's about comparing against each
Y'all seem super engaged in whatever you're talking about. We focus our stuff, right? But thank you for at least looking like you're super engaged in the conversation. So what are some of the key things that you all were talking about in your conversations?
Yeah, or even questions that you had that arose out of it that maybe we can help shed light.
I brought up, and I'll repeat this context of kind of burnout in a very unique way. So a lot of folks were, RHA president, president of the SGA, RA here, you name it. And that's probably 75 to 80% of the field. So what do you do when folks have gotten that recognition? They're like, oh my God, I'm going to grad school. And you're that one friend who goes to grad school, even though that's a requirement of our field in some ways, right? And so you've gotten all these titles behind your name and all this social gratification during social media. And then what do you do when you go to a grad program and everybody else was the best of the best? And then once you go to be a first year professional and everybody else is not going to congratulate you for hosting the program that is in your living learning community in your building. So that feels like you're not being recognized. That feels like being burnt out because you're always striving to do better so you can be seen, because you're not used to kind of the fish in the pond complex. All of your other coworkers are also doing great things. You don't feel special, you don't feel recognized. And so we're not talking about the social development of student affairs professionals being the best of the best, being amongst the best, and not being recognized for being the best because you just did your damn job. Sincerely.
Yes.
Well,
And I think there's a whole lot there that we could unpack on a whole other section. Like there are
Just
a few
did your
key
job.
pieces that stand out for me in terms of parenting and rewarding and all those things that were, you were brought up, and then all of a sudden that recognition doesn't exist. And Simon Sinek has a great 15-minute video on millennials in the workplace. Whether you agree with it or not is a different story, but he brings out some of those exact points. So thank you for sharing that.
Well,
Sure.
I think too, it also, what you're telling me is how I think some of my research bleeds into where yours did, right? Like, so I mentioned that I did have one graduate student in my study who had just left undergrad straight through. So would be in the kind of space that you're talking about. And so you extend that developmental experience, which is not where I went with my study, but you can certainly do that. If you want to do a longitudinal study, there's one for you right there. And those kinds of same influences, even if it's not on social media, it's that same kind of behavior that also appears here.
But I think how that also plays out is when the best of the best become supervisors and advisors, they almost take on the students' roles, because what does that look like when you can no longer share the work you're doing on social media? You then want to share all your students' work, which is a different level of gratification.
Ah, that's a good one, because sometimes I will notice that, I'll look at student affairs professionals posts and say, you'll see look at all the amazing work that my students are doing. And sometimes when I read that, it's like, I can sometimes interpret it as, okay, that could just be, look at the amazing work my students are doing. Or it could be, look at the amazing work my students are doing because I'm awesome. Right? So,
Because I'm great.
I'm sharing that's the dance, right? That's the game that the students talk about, that by showing that I can't appear like I'm trying too hard, so I can't say I'm awesome, but if I show my students are awesome, then I'm showing that I'm awesome. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for that, because I have a coworker that does that, and it spreads some negativity and hostility on our professional staff. Like, we're all also doing great things, but we don't feel the need to showcase it like ad nauseum all the time. And that attitude has bled into their student staff, and their student staff now act like that for other staff on campus. It's sometimes I think can be a healthy competition point of like, we want to be as good as that staff, but I think it can also just create really unhealthy expectations, and it's like competition that's ugly and not a good thing. But something else that we were talking about was all the things that you mentioned interested in these students were feeling. We were like, we feel the exact same thing. But like those were all sentiments that we're sharing. So I think how just as the students are struggling with those things, we're also struggling with it. So how do we help them when we can't even manage? And then the other piece we were talking about was feeling this need nowadays of like wanting to disconnect from social media and getting off our phones, but at the same time feeling like we need to be on it to stay informed, especially in the past few months of like stepping away as a privilege, and we don't feel like that's responsible right now. We need to be aware, we need to be engaged with what's happening in the world. And so how do you kind of resolve both those things together where it's all or nothing with what's on your phone?
Yeah, that's very real. A lot of my students, one of the things that having a dissertation committee can be a wonderful thing. And in fact, sometimes they point out things that you never even noticed. And one of my committee members said, ask them if they've ever taken a break from social media for any period of time, and why, and what did they do, and things like that. And so I did, and almost all of them did. And they all almost universally found that to be a healthy experience for them, like a positive one, because it reset the expectations. They go into these patterns and just do them without even thinking, right? And so by taking a break, it disrupted the pattern and made them come back and say, okay, why is this in my life? Why do I want to do this? In a very way that was very productive for them. So.
So I found at my institution, no one can feel bad. Our staff actually don't want to be showcased, because I'm the marketing dude at my school, and our staff doesn't want to be showcased. So like I tried to do I did a Man Crush Monday on our Twitter feed, and the professional I highlighted was like, please take it down. I don't want to be showcased. I don't want any of that. This is not for myself. Like I'm not here to gain. I'm not here to push my limits. I'm here to push my limits for my students, not to push my limits to get likes on social media or to get retweets or follows. So I found that what y'all are saying is that they do the exact opposite. I'm like, why don't we highlight you from our department? So Simon Point, we can put that in our newsletters and we can distribute on our campus to talk about the great things that we're doing. They're like, no, this is not for me, this is with them. And I'm like, it can be for both of you. You have to find that kind of middle ground where you're not just highlighting yourself and talking about all the great things you're doing. You're highlighting the programs that your RA is doing. You're highlighting what RHA is doing. You're highlighting what other organizations that your advisor is doing. And they're like, no, I'm out. Don't do it. Don't take my picture. Don't put it on social media. Definitely don't put it on Facebook. And I'm like, guys, this is to help brand us and really push us forward. And they're like, nope, not at all. Done. I'm like, okay. So I started doing that last year, and then I just stopped because they didn't care. So I don't know how to like work around that, but something that's why I came to this group is to help my staff feel more appreciative of social media, but they don't like it.
Yes, sir.
And I think therein lies your presentation. We just actually heard it in the last few comments. You have one comment of this employees doing this for their satisfaction. You got one where, oh, I can't do it. And it's sort of like throwing a bunch of confetti up in the air and say, pick out the one that's, the shortest. I mean, I think we're that confused. And so as professionals, we're wrestling with, do I say something about my staff member and have people that judge me this way? Do I don't do anything? Am I seen as a professional because I say I'm about the students? And to some degree, we got to feed all of that in us. And we got to feed both sides of that. There are times in which we do need to say, you know what, I was good. I mean, I was really good. And then that's right, pop the collar. And then there are some times in which I think you need to pass that on to other students or colleagues. And I think it's so blurred now that I think therein lies. You're burnt out because you're like, what do I do and when do I?
Yes, sir.
So we were actually started talking quite a bit about your piece of it, about the burnout aspect, and because we all came in expecting you to tell us and validate that. But it was just interesting because we started specifically talking about group meeting. Now very common thing, like RA staff has a group meeting, our council has a group meeting, and how that impacts the perceived availability of professional staff members. And so, like I have one with my whole council, and they'll be like basically having a meeting, group meeting over the weekend, and they'll be like, hey Ryan, what about this? And I'm not answering, and then they get mad at me, and I'm like, I don't, to me this is work, which I don't do on the weekend. So, or I try not to. Realistically, I do, but I try not to. I don't want them to know that I do it on the weekend. So that's why I found that interesting, because just from the accessibility piece and how much access do your students expect to have from you, and how has social media changed that, especially the thing that I used to engage. That's just like, I do not connect with my students on social media at all. It's a boundary that I have, but I know that's not everyone. So I just don't know if that came up, like how has social media impacted the perceived accessibility of staff?
Sure. That wasn't something that I specifically looked into, but I hear that, right? Like I hear that in my staff, and I think that that's a good topic if you don't have your doctorate yet, that you can definitely research and tell us a little bit more about how that works out. I know, I think that existed prior to social media, but I think it's amplified by social media, right? So the ones that were in the office at 7 in the morning, the ones that didn't go home until 11 o'clock at night were perceived to be more available than those of us who are 8 to 5ers. And stick pretty close to that. And so I think that you're onto something, and I think it would be valuable if you or someone else in the room would take on that research and come back next year and tell us more about that. I don't have an answer for you.
So social media also too tends to surface things that already existed but we didn't see in the same kind of way, right? Like, so, you think of kind of like the doing something to make sure you get a like or some of that kind of behavior. We've kind of done that stuff in the physical world anyways, right? Like choosing what we wear, choosing how we present, like that existed. I think what's different is you're presented with it constantly, and so you see it constantly. And so when it comes to like communication and maybe generational expectations around that and what that means, exactly what you just said. Those people exist, that they're going to be hanging around the office till late and things like that. Now you're seeing it transferred into a digital space, which has different repercussions, right? Like you can leave the office, if the students hang around and be like, maybe you should go to bed, and kind of kind of get them to go. You can't do that when they can just message you all the time, right? The functionalities change, so it changes the landscape.
So any, one of the things we talked about was the additional support provided through social media. So in your look at burnout, particularly in the community aspect, did you see anything as it related to, I use social media to provide support for having dealt with crisis? When I first started, I could call a few people and express frustrations or process crisis. But now, without getting into too much detail, you say, hey, I just managed this huge crisis or just dealt with a flood, and you've got 100 people saying, oh, I feel so bad for you, let me know if you need anything. Did you get anything from that?
So not from this research study,
Okay.
but through my program, I did do a small research study on Twitter hashtag communities,
Okay.
and in there specifically the essay doc community. And yes, there's a lot of support that came out in that. That was a qualitative research project that I did. And in particular, the women that I spoke to in that project found a lot of support and camaraderie within that hashtag community, independent of if they were in a cohort program, I was not in a cohort program, all those different types of things. So I think the social media can provide that,
Okay.
but that's not something that I looked into in regards to my dissertation.
And it showed up a little bit in when I mentioned Logan, who's a gay male, not out to his parents, would not post photos of his boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't think it was on this one. It was the one I just did before this one. Or detag any photos immediately, right? And so some of my students that had marginalized identities and things of that sort found comfort in community spaces where they could find like-minded individuals, right? Which is, again, not a new concept, but using online has some advantages. So, why are all the Black kids sitting together at the cafeteria table at that moment? Why are all the Black kids hanging out in this online space together? Same thing, the cafeteria table is just now virtual. So Dr. Z. Nicolazzo, a good friend of mine, did research on transgender students in college, students who are transgender, and online kinship was huge for them because, part of being trans and being visible and things like that play into how are other people accepting you. And if you can find an online space where you might not find someone that's like you in the immediate physical area, but you can find it online is huge for support. Dealing with crisis and things of that sort, those virtual communities can have that same kind of effect.
I ask because my experience with burnout, both personally and as a supervisor, have been mostly connected with the emotional aspects of our position and the crisis management and the inability to continue providing that same level of care to students. And so, I just want
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out, and if you'll go to Kuhawai, we're adding additional people to this conversation, and Dr. Linnell Hodge did her dissertation on that.
Okay.
Exactly. So she'll be able to speak to that if you'll be at a Kuhawai. So, yeah. Other questions at this point?
I'll just tack on to that, moving into compassion fatigue is really what you're talking about. I did a lot of research on that in grad school, and I've done some presentations in with my RA staff and first staff, and that's really resonated with folks. And a lot of them just conceptualize it in a different way, and then seek their own support in separate ways.
Right.
Besides just going and talking about burnout, that can be sometimes I think very general, like talking about our profession specifically and like what that looks like. I think I've been talking about with colleagues a lot recently. It's like, maybe for being rash, but like I can't find another dead kid. Like that's something that like is really common in my department. I had several last year of like I just can't do that anymore. Especially I think that's something that's so unique to our field and to specific jobs that can sometimes help. Even if you're going to seek your own therapy or counseling or support of like this is why I'm feeling the burnout because I'm giving in highly emotional ways, and that's helped some of my colleagues. So.
It's amazing how much that's connected to reward as well. And we talked a little bit about how with the FLSA threshold and the increase of salaries, particularly for entry level or those individuals that would be impacted by that. It'd be interesting to see how that impacts moving forward.
Yeah.
Got a little bit more for you.
I think you kick us off on this
I
one.
think I do.
Some implications for practice. What are some tangible things that we think you can take away?
So your mobile tech use is not burning you out, but what is burning you out is your values alignment to your institution and your control over your workload. Those are the two biggest predictors of burnout in student affairs. So new professionals, those who are searching this season, where you work matters more than you think it might. So pay attention to, do some of that self-work. Who are you? What do you value? What is it that's really important about the work that you do? And then try your best to find an institution that aligns with that. I'm lucky enough to have found that institution, and now that I'm working at an institution that does align with my values, I'm the happiest camper in the world. I can deal with the most crap in the whole world because I'm at this institution and I know that we're working for the good and that our values align. And so that really does make a difference when you're searching for your next institution for sure. Control over your work and your values are key to your workplace happiness. Absolutely. The more control you can have over, even you may not have control over what you have to do, but how you get to do it can be very powerful. So when you're having conversations with potential supervisors, you're trying to pick up a pulse on what a department is like, pay attention to those key phrases or comments that may help you decipher whether you will have control over how you get to do your work. Some future research, those of you who may want to look into burnout a little bit more in student affairs, please focus on all the genders and the differences that may exist between the genders. That was a small piece of mine that I had the data, but I didn't dig into that. And so I would recommend anybody who's interested in that, please look at that because I guarantee you you'll find a difference there. And I think that that's a big missing piece in the burnout literature right now. Also, all the family statuses. You know, being a single mom, having a 12-year-old, and how do I balance that while I'm living in and making things work, that's going to impact burnout very differently than someone like me who has a good partner that is a true, probably stronger partner, who takes the kid when we have a hurricane coming and I don't have to worry about the home life, right? That's very different for me than it would be for other families and what those dynamics may look like and how that contributes to burnout in the workplace as well. Definitely there needs to be some more discussion about different institution types and position types. I dabbled in this just a little bit. I have some of this data, but anybody who wants to dig into that, I'll get you started. But we definitely need to talk about, you know, what does it mean to be a live-in hall director versus what does it mean to work in student activities versus what does it mean to work in academic advising. Those are going to have very different burnout components to their jobs, and that's just not present in the literature. So I'm giving you a whole bunch of dissertation topics. Also institution types. You know, we are a behemoth, right? With 65,000 students on our campus. That may be very different than somebody who has 1,000 students on their campus. We house almost 12,000. That's very different than an institution that houses 800. What does the burnout look like in that environment? What does the staffing patterns look like in that environment? How can that impact the way people approach their work and the value that they find in the work that they do?
So I've said this before, I say it frequently because I think it encapsulates in part, actually it's in both of our cases. You know, we need to learn to own rather than be owned by the technology. When it comes to when we're on duty, are we being owned by it? It rings, we freak out and things like that, right? Like, or myself who once dropped a duty cell phone into the toilet at 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't do that. But also, a student, you know, who needs to learn to kind of own their own experience rather than being subject to, here's this game that starts playing and I just start doing it without thinking, right? And so part of that too, you know, as relates to technology is understanding some of the competencies that are out there. ACPA and NASPA, of course, added a technology component to their competencies just this past year. There's also some on the student side. So ISTE, which stands for the International Society for Technology and Education, has standards for students in terms of technology use. Now they focus on K through 12, but I will say that I don't believe K through 12 is doing this particularly well. So and neither are we. So there's still room that we can work off of their standards because there's no higher ed tech standards for students that I've ever found that exist. So ISTE's the closest to that, and pretty good at that. We talked about taking a break from technology. In my case, it's with students and social media. They found a lot of value from that. But I think tech detoxes are things that everyone does every now and then, and can be a very healthy thing, right? Walking away from email. I have that experience. I traveled to Cuba just last month, and so no internet, so I have no phone, which for anyone who knows me is pretty revolutionary and shocking that I could go that long without a phone. But it was good. It caused me to reset my relationship with technology. How can we be vulnerable? Online, through online interactions, share our experiences and our struggles. I recognize that being vulnerable can sometimes be a privilege, and who gets to be vulnerable and in what spaces. But I think the more that we're able to do that, or at least feel like we can do that, the better we'll be in terms of where we are. And we can learn from each other. We're all in this together. So students can teach us how to use tech tools that we didn't even know. And we can help teach them how to maybe manage that and fit that into their lives in ways that maybe they're not very good at. So how can we really kind of develop that learning partnership? Learning partnerships with students, learning partnerships across professional, levels and categories, and be a part of that experience. So that's what we had for you today. So I don't know if there's any questions you want to ask. We do have a few minutes if you have some last minute ones that you want to throw out there. That's really good space. Okay, so thank you, everyone.